Hello everybody and welcome back. My name is Curseof and welcome back to another video. It's been a hot second, but we are finally back with some more Yu-Gi-Oh! Speed Duel discussion videos. And today I'm here to talk to you guys about the very problematic deck, the tier 1 deck of this format, that being Conflict Warrior. And the topic of discussion today is how to beat Conflict Warrior. Before I go any further into this video, I'd like to ask you guys that if you do enjoy my content, and if you enjoy this video at the end of it, please hit that subscribe button. According to my channel analytics, 69.6 of you who've watched my videos in the last 28 days are not subscribed. That is a astounding percent of you guys. So if you wanted to take that little bit of extra time, hit that subscribe button, it would be greatly appreciate it. But anyway, let's get into the video. So, we're here talking about the tier 1 deck of this format, that being Conflict Warrior. Conflict Warrior with Jinzo. What makes this deck overall so problematic? I mean, obviously, it's a huge issue, the fact that the deck has access to a floodgate that is super easily accessible, but more than that, this deck OTKs consistently. Going second is meta, but if you make this deck go first, you run the risk of just losing on their following turn, which is not a healthy format at all. And I'm going to explain to you guys basically how to defeat this conflict deck, and basically the way you are required now to construct your deck in this format if you want to have any chance of topping at all. So, first things first, let's go ahead and talk about the very problematic card in the deck, that being Inner Conflict. Inner Conflict is the skill that the deck uses that is basically just change of heart that you don't need to draw. You go ahead and set a monster, your opponent takes it, trips it off, and what do? They summon a Jinzo. How do you respond to this Jinzo summon? Well, do you have offerings? No? You don't respond to the summon then. That Jinzo hits the field, it sits there, and all your traps are no longer live. You don't have access to Dust Tornado, to Zoma, to Floodgate Trap Hole. All your traps are now turned off for the game, and your opponent has a 2400 body that, well, I mean, they just took your monster and tributed it off for, so they actually went +1 in the exchange, and got a trapped Floodgate on the field. That is absolutely absurd. And like I said, if your opponent went first on the previous turn and they set a monster, every monster Conflict Warrior runs in their deck offers an OTK. So they flip up their Command Knight or their Gear Freed, or maybe they normal summon the Charging Gaia, and now they have either exactly 4,000 or over 4,000 damage, and they just outright kill you right then and there. This is a huge problem in this format, and is honestly why I have not been enjoying this format. And yeah, I'm basically going to try to explain to you guys how you can actually deal with this whole OTK combo. So, as I just mentioned, Jinzo is the main problematic card in this deck. Obviously, Change of Heart plus Jinzo is a very powerful combo. So what we need to do is we need to deal with Jinzo. And the two best cards to deal with Jinzo is Offerings to the Doomed and Sphere Karibo. These two cards are extremely powerful, as Jinzo's primary weakness is the fact that it has 1500 defense, meaning the majority of the monsters that are used in this current format are able to swing over it. So if your opponent swings into you with a Jinzo, you Sphere Karibo it, you stop the OTK, and then you summon out a Gear Freed of your own, or your own Command Knight, or your own Gaia, or your own, I don't know, something bigger than 1500 defense. You swing over their Jinzo, and now you're in a much better position where you no longer have to worry about the OTK. This is obviously a very easy answer. Following up on that, we have the other card I mentioned, that being Offerings to the Doomed. Your opponent attempts to swing in with Jinzo, you flip up an Offerings, they can't stop spells, you out their Jinzo, and now once again all your traps are live, so you can go ahead and play your Zomas or play your Dust Tornadoes. And yeah, these are the two primary outs to Jinzo in the current format, and because there are such easy outs, you guys might be like, well, why is this deck so problematic? Well, what makes this deck so problematic is the fact that you need to draw these out. If you don't open Offerings or you don't open Sphere Kuriboh, you basically cannot out their Jinzo. And not only do you need to open up with an Offerings and a Sphere Kuriboh, you also need to have a follow-up. If you Sphere Kuriboh but you do not have a monster big enough to run over Jinzo, that Sphere Kuriboh really didn't do anything for you, and you'll just lose on the following turn. If you Offerings their Jinzo, but you don't have something bigger than the other monster they have on the field, or a Zoma or something, then you still can't win off of Offerings. Both these cards are Jinzo answers, yes, but they require you to have a follow-up, and they do have repercussions. Your opponent went, first off, +1 off of their whole Jinzo play, and you activated an Offerings that is a 1-for-1, but you skip your next draw phase. So, yikes. And then another thing to add on to this, Conflict is preparing for the mirrors as well. So, they're also going to be running Sphere Kuribohs and Offerings. So even if you spin their Jinzo and you try to swing in, who's to say that they're not going to have the answer to your monster? They have just as likely odds as you do, which still makes this deck such a huge problem. Even though these are the two best ways to deal with it, they have so many flaws, and it makes this deck still so strong. Another card that a lot of people thought was a bit better in this matchup, but is actually kind of bad, is Warrior Elimination. Warrior Elimination was played a lot at the beginning, sort of similar to Eradicating Aerosol. But what kind of comes into play when you think about it a little bit more is the fact that Aerosol and Warrior Elim are just too slow to beat either Moth or Conflict Warrior. And what I mean by that is, if they just kill you that turn, you're never going to get to use Warrior Elim or Aerosol. I'm just going to stop talking about Aerosol, but you'll never get to use Warrior Elim if they just kill you that turn. Along with that, Warrior Elim doesn't deal with Jinzo. So yes, it's a very, very powerful card for the remainder of their deck, but dealing with their main boss monster, it does nothing. And if you just lose that turn, it still does nothing. You just lost. So, Warrior Elim, people think it's a good side deck against it. Personally, unless your deck is very, very good at surviving, I just don't think it's a viable card to use at all. Yeah, guys, I'm really sorry. I know I'm supposed to be explaining to you how to beat Conflict Warrior, and I'm just kind of explaining to you why you can't beat Conflict Warrior. But this is the meta that we're in. But yes, Sphere Kuriboh and Offerings, very, very good. Very, very good. Definitely like the two best answers to the whole issue in the entire deck. And along with that, if you do survive the Jinzo play and you do have follow-ups with cards like that of Yomi Ship, Newdoria, or Old Vindictive Magician, or you can start outing their Jinzo with monster effects, that is another very, very viable way to stop their Jinzo. The whole issue is surviving the OTK, but here's the good news. If you do survive the OTK and you do out their Jinzo, the remainder of the game is a very honest game. They only have their one play and their one huge, like, game-stopping potential OTK for their Jinzo, but then after that, you're playing a more honest back-and-forth game where you actually get to have a chance against them. You're just playing a warrior deck that has a couple Jinzos in it now, which is a lot better looking than what you were looking at just a second ago, where they had Change of Heart constantly active. So, now that I've mentioned all the cards that you can kind of play to out Jinzo, yeah, that's basically it. There is other ones, like you could play Tribute to the Doom and stuff like that, but they're just not as good, not as viable, and just not as worth it. So, I don't recommend playing them, but they do exist. But anyway, like I was saying, now that that is done, we're going to start going into some more deck-specific things that are actually going to deal with Conflict Warrior. And the first one I want to talk about, which is actually basically the anti-conflict deck of the meta that not a lot of people have looked into, or even really realized even exists, is Viral Despair. By the way, check the description. Yugioh Legacy did a video basically showing off the Viral deck versus Conflict Warrior and just how good it is. So please check the description and check out that video. I highly, highly recommend it. But What makes Viral so good against Conflict is that their only outs to your 3000 Despair booty is their skill and their 3 offerings to the Doomed. So if you go ahead and ditch cards to out their offerings from their deck, because offerings is usually the only spell they play, once you have all 3 offerings out of their deck and you have a 3000 booty on the field, they probably already burnt their skill to try and go to an OTK, but you had 6 hand traps and offerings to the Doomed. They couldn't OTK you. You have a 3000 booty. They have no offerings. You deck them out and win. Please check Legacy's video on this deck. It is absolutely amazing in this matchup and is actually a decent rogue deck for this format because it deals with the tier 1 strategy so well. Highly recommend checking it out. But that's the big issue with the Conflict strategy, is that you basically have 2400, you have offerings, and you have no other outs to big monsters in the deck, or big defense monsters in the deck. So if someone gets that out and you don't have any offerings or you don't have your skill anymore, you basically just lose from there, which is very insane, and it's the primary weakness to the deck, is that it needs its offerings to the Doomed so bad. And because of that, Viral is a very powerful strategy. Speaking of big booties and just big attack points, the next deck I'm going to mention here is Moth. Yes, Moth is no longer the best deck of the format, but it does still have a very good matchup versus Conflict. If you do survive their whole Jinzo play with Sphere Kuriboh or offerings or what have you, they do probably have another face-up monster after that OTK. What can you do? End phase Parasite it, or main phase Parasite it. Whenever you have Parasite, tribute it off, summon 1 to 2 3500 beat 6 3000 defense monsters. Sphere Kuriboh doesn't answer your monsters. Yeah, sure, offerings is good, Zoma is great, but now they need to have access to one of these over Sphere Kuriboh, and even if they spin you with Sphere Kuriboh, what are they going to do against your 3000 booty? It goes back to the exact same sort of scenario as Viral. 3000 booty with other offerings they just can't deal with. Yes, they're going to have offerings in this matchup, but if you can just OTK them with Moth, you no longer need to worry about the fact that they have offerings. Parasite Paranoid plus Cocoon is still a +2, and if it's gotten off, it can be more powerful than the Conflict play. It's just that the Conflict play is easier to get off and OTKs more often, which just makes it more powerful, but Moth is still a very viable strategy and can really punish your opponent for putting a face-up Jinzo. So let's see here. I've talked about Relinquished, Moth, Viral. I've talked about monster effects, monster trigger effects. I've talked about hand traps, offerings. What else is there to talk about? Ah, yes. The best way to counter Jinzo. Play your own Jinzo. Play Inner Conflict Jinzo. If your opponent Inner Conflicts and they summon their Jinzo, and you're able to Sphere Kuriboh it, or you're just able to out it with an offerings, then you get to Inner Conflict their other monster and summon your own Jinzo, you might just be able to OTK off of their play. So, sadly, the format we are currently in is you beat Conflict by playing Conflict. This is the best answer to it. It is the best follow-up off of offerings / Sphere Kuriboh. And yeah, that's the format we live in. It gives you the ability to OTK. It gives you the ability to out their OTK without needing big monsters or anything. It's basically a guaranteed out because they can't respond to your skill effect. Yeah. Well, that's depressing. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button down below and also consider subscribing. I did show you the statistics earlier on in the video as to how many of you are not subscribed, and it would be greatly appreciated if you did decide to subscribe. Along with that, please check the description down below for Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy's Show Me the Spice Viral Despair video. Fantastic video. And also check out all my socials. We have Twitter, we have Twitch, we have Discord! Go join my Discord! What are you doing, man? But anyway, thank you for watching this video, and I'll catch you guys all either tomorrow or the following day for another video. That's a wrap, guys. Peace.